This is the X106 podcast. I'm Sean Nino, joined by Trevor Mader and Jacob Blair. This week, we're going to be talking about NFL and college football. But first, for the NFL, since we are all Chiefs fans here on this podcast, we are going to begin with more of a Chiefs part of the podcast. So, Jacob, the questions that you posed this week were, what does the Eric Berry injury mean for the Chiefs, and where did Alex Smith come from? So, we'll let you take this off.
Well, first off, Eric Berry going down, I think is going to be a big issue for the Chiefs because they're not real deep in the secondary as they've been before. I mean, I went and had to look up who's behind Eric Berry. Never heard of him before.
Is it Eric Murray?
Yeah, 9 career tackles in 17 games.
Well, it's because he hasn't had to be there is the thing. So we don't directly know what he's going to do, but they're going to hope that he can fill a gap. It's not going to be the same way that it would have been, but it's going to be something. You know?
I think we're going to see a lot of Sorensen coming as we look to the future. We're going to try to move him over and try to have him fill the spot, and maybe you'll see Terrence Mitchell have to play a little bit of safety, try to teach him, the guy behind Phillip Gaines.
And you can hope too that maybe Ron Parker gets healthy and stays healthy and can step up in there too. I think where Barry will be missed the most is from that leadership facet. Don't get me wrong, the guy does incredible things on the field, but I'll be interested to see what Sorensen can do and what Parker and Murray can do when given the opportunity. And there is no sugarcoating it. It is a really, really huge loss for them defensively, and it'll be interesting to see how they bounce back from it and what they do to fill that void.
Yeah, it's kind of like how Derek Johnson went out last year. Not quite the same impact because Eric Berry, I would say, is the best player right now on that defense because Justin Houston was still hurt last year, and this may have been the first game that he's been 100% for maybe two and a half years. And other than that, you can't really name a guy who has that kind of impact that Eric Berry had every single game.
Yeah, and you really can't replace someone that came back from leukemia, and just the symbolism he has with that team, with the fans. That's going to be the biggest thing to replace it, is just not having Eric Berry out on the field for the fans, and then not having him out there on the field to lead the team. But I already read after the game he was in the locker room right there giving words of encouragement. So he'll be there all season long trying to help that defense along.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge loss, but I mean, it wouldn't be the first time they've gone a year without him. Even before the cancer diagnosis, was it 2011 or 12 that he
12 because his first season was 11.
No, I thought his first season was 10. I'm pretty sure he got hurt the same year that Jamal Charles did, because Charles got hurt in week 1 and then Barry got hurt in week 2, and I mean Matt Castle and Michael Bennett led the way for the Chiefs and almost got them to the playoffs. So I mean, it wouldn't be the first time they've had to figure out how to get around without him. Not that makes it any easier, because I mean the guy, there's just certain things on the field, certain plays he made on Thursday night. The first 4th down stop, that was just pure studying and instinct that you can't really coach that, and it's really difficult to replace.
Yeah. So next we will go to the next question. Unless you had anything else to say about Eric Berry.
No, we'll move on to Alex Smith, and that's what happens when you put a fire under somebody, and you give them a reason to have to go, take risks. Because without him, he's always been afraid to take the risks. But now, because he doesn't take that risk, he's getting himself pushed out of the Chiefs organization. So he's like, nope, I'm not losing my job again. I'm going to take those risks. And some of the throws he made Thursday night, I haven't seen him make before.
Mm-hmm. And I wonder how much of it was Alex being able to make those throws physically, or maybe it was Andy Reid maybe being a little more gutsy, opening up those plays and saying, you know what, we got weapons. We got a guy like Kareem Hunt who can get out in the open. We got Tyreek Hill, who is, for my money, the fastest guy in the NFL. Why not take advantage of it? They're going to shut down Travis Kelce, and for the most part, they did. Let's try to beat them in other ways and give Alex the opportunity to throw the ball deep. I think, agreeing with what you said, Jacob, I think having Mahomes in there kind of maybe motivates Alex Smith a little more, because even if he's not the guy in Kansas City next year, and there's a very strong chance they can make the playoffs and him still not be the guy, he's going to be a free agent. His contract's up at the end of the year. It was a 4-year, $68 million deal that he had. he's going to want to prove to some team, whether it's the Chiefs or whether it's Jacksonville next year, that, hey, I'm the guy. I still have it. Look what I did this year. I look what I'm capable of doing. You look at his stats last year, and, I mean, they were very pedestrian. It wasn't $16 million stats. I mean, when you start 15 games and you throw for 30, I mean, he did throw for 3,500 yards, which is incredible to believe, but just 15 touchdowns. We're one game into the season. He threw 4 touchdowns and just under 400 yards Thursday night, excuse me. I mean, that's the type of play he needs day in and day out.
Yeah, well, I mean, he doesn't even have to quite do that. I think the defense had to they had to find a way to get to Tom Brady, excuse me, and they couldn't do it in the first half. And once that happened, then the entire team just kind of came together because they didn't have to make these big plays that would get them back into the game. It was more to end the game per se. You know when Kareem Hunt made that catch, great to see, and then when he scores a touchdown, better. And when he makes the run when the Chiefs are up, and it's, I think, the 57-yard run? That sounds
something like that.
And then Charkandrick West comes in, scores a touchdown. That's it. It's over. You don't have to you can just kind of sit back and be like, okay, this is nice to see. But when it's the beginning of the second half and he throws the long pass to Tyreek Hill, that's one where, if you're ahead or like down, say 14, you might not be able to get that exact thing, but the game played out the way it did, and Chiefs ended up taking the game.
Well, and you look at the throw he had to Kareem Hunt there. I can't remember what part of the game it was, but the long touchdown pass. I mean, he put that ball exactly where it had to be. If Kareem Hunt has to look back for that ball or step back, even just a little, he loses his stride, and instead of being a long touchdown, I mean, it's still a big play, but it's not a touchdown, and who knows what happens from there. He put that ball exactly where it needed to be. Kareem Hunt caught it in stride. Good luck tackling him, and it was a touchdown, and it helped him win the game. I mean, and New England had a lot of problems too. Let's not take away from that. I mean, their defense, they couldn't get a pass rush either. I mean, really the only sack of Alex Smith was the one where he sacked himself in the first half. Mm-hmm. I mean, they couldn't pass rush the entire game, and you could tell they were missing Edelman. You could tell. I mean, it took Brandon Cooks a while to get comfortable. I mean, he did have that one long catch, but Gronk didn't do a ton. He had a couple of catches that
I think he had 2.
Yeah, and they were Gronk catches. I mean, there wasn't really anything that the defender could do to prevent it. Gronk just made a great play.
Yeah.
I think there's more issues on that Patriot defense than just what Bill Belichick and blanking on the
Matt Patricia.
Yeah, Patricia can fix. I think there's more issues in that the NFL is a lot more wide open than a lot of people think it is.
And I think you saw a lot of that on Thursday night, definitely after Dante Hightower went down, because he's kind of the captain of that defense, and being the middle linebacker, I mean, that's maybe the most important spot. It's the quarterback of the defense, essentially. Mm-hmm. And when he went down,
you could see that they had to reduce what they could call even.
And I've always, you look at even their secondary, I've always thought Malcolm Butler is really overrated. I mean, the guy made one really...
Well, I mean, it did win the game, so obviously you're going to get all that
But he
hype.
made one good play, and all of a sudden he's, probably one of the higher paid corners in the league. And there's a lot of holes on that defense. I mean, the pass rush, the secondary got burned a couple times, as you can see. I mean, Stephon Gilmore, we watched the play a couple times.
Yeah.
I mean, he just looked silly trying to cover Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, he's going to make people look like that sometimes just because he is that fast. So if he gets a few feet for another guy, he could be, right on that guy. But if you're on Tyreek Hill, he could just turn that into a big play right there, and you're like, So, I think it'll be interesting to see how this entire year comes out. So I guess we'll kind of do a little bit of what do you expect from the Chiefs coming up this Sunday?
I personally I'm anticipating a letdown. I just am. I mean, it's the cynical fan in me that is anticipating the letdown. I mean, Carson Wentz had a decent game on Sunday, so it'll be interesting to see, the first game without Eric Berry out back there at all. So that'll be really interesting to see. And I'm a believer right now. I had the Chiefs going about 12-4, but I had them losing to the Patriots. So okay, now I'm racking my brain and going, okay, well, I had the Patriots at 14-2 before they lost to the Chiefs. So now does that put both of them at 13-3? And if you're the Chiefs, you're in the situation now where I know it's early, it's week 1, but if you can beat Pittsburgh and even just split with Oakland, the AFC runs through Kansas City as long as you do what you got to do and don't have your annual letdown game, which will probably come at some point.
Yeah, that'll happen. As long as it doesn't happen to like the Jets, I think I can get over it. If they lose to the Jets, it will be a rough Monday coming into work. Let me tell you that much.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think you're coming back home after just beating the New England Patriots. Arrowhead is going to be loud, and I think that will help the Chiefs pick up the win against the Eagles. I think the issue is going to come after that when they head to Los Angeles in that small stadium. I think that could be your letdown game out there in Los Angeles at a 26,000 person stadium. We're playing in a soccer stadium. It just be weird after beating the Patriots, coming back home and seeing how happy your fans are you beat the Patriots. That I think that Charger game could be your letdown game.
What I think will be interesting this week is you got Doug Peterson, who was the offensive coordinator for 4 years in Kansas City, I think 3 maybe, running a pretty similar offense to what they ran in Kansas City. So you got Bob Sutton, who basically practiced against Doug Peterson's defense for 3 years. So you're going to have a chess game going on there as far as, are there going to be things that Philadelphia is going to be able to see and pick apart and expose? Or are there going to be things that Bob Sutton and that defense is able to see? And this is where a guy like Eric Berry would maybe be huge for them. Are they going to be able to see things and kind of before they happen and take advantage of them? I think, being a home opener in Arrowhead, being 1-0, that's pretty awesome because I don't know how many. I personally didn't think they were going to win Thursday, and I talked to a lot of Chiefs fans that were just hoping it was a game. So, looking at letdown, I could see the Chargers game. The Texans is the one that.
Well, the Texans didn't look great, but we'll get into that here.
Yeah, the
bit.
Texans letdown the Texans game is the one that I have worried is a letdown game.
So while you guys were talking, I looked up when Andy Reid played the Philadelphia Eagles, and it was his first year, and the Chiefs won 26-16.
It's a Thursday night game.
Yeah,
I remember that.
So
I believe that was the last game Michael Vick started for the Eagles, if I remember correctly.
That sounds correct, but I can't,
Yeah,
I can't think about it directly. But yeah, I didn't know if they had played just because he was the coach there for so many years. But this will be the second game that they will play. This one will be at Arrowhead on Sunday, and I think I was not high on the Eagles coming into this year, but they did show me something on Sunday that they could beat the Redskins, and so. I had them, I think, going 6-10 just because I didn't believe in Carson Wentz. But I think if he can play the way he did, then they could be a playoff team. But I still think the Chiefs are going to win because you guys talked about you don't generally go into that stadium. The Chiefs generally play well against good teams, and then it's the bad teams that you're like, oh, you just play down to their level. So anything else to add about the Chiefs before we go into the rest of the NFL week 1?
Well, you were asking where did this Alex Smith come from? I Googled it. He comes from Utah.
What?
And other than that, that's it.
Yeah, that's true. I think he knew that he had to play for his job. Not quite like other guys who were like actually playing for their job now, but he's trying to audition for other teams or still even this team for next year.
Yeah, and I just hope that it's Alex keeps playing the way he does, so then you don't get into the situation in 2018 where it's, well, Mahomes isn't ready, but we didn't like what we saw of Alex this year. Now what do we do? Do we throw in a guy that's maybe not quite ready, or do we bite the bullet and give $14 million to a guy that's going to throw for 15 or 20 touchdowns and really just play to not lose us games? So I hope we see the same Alex Smith game in and game out. You got the toys, use them.
So now we'll just talk more about the bigger games that happened over this past weekend. The first one, since it's the first one on my screen right now, we will go the Packers and the Seahawks. The Packers won at home 17-9. Was there anything that surprised you in this game, or did it play out how you might think.
It played out about how I might think. I think us three could block better for Russell Wilson than that offensive line did.
I don't think that's true because we don't have the size, but I get your point. That offensive line made the Packers' D-line look great, and they are not.
No. I mean, other than Mike Daniels, former Hawkeye, really everyone else on that Packers D-line is pretty pedestrian, and they did look like world beaters, and Seattle couldn't get a lot going offensively.
No, they had one drive to end the first half, which got them a field goal, but other than that, nothing.
Yeah.
Hey, either the Packers are your new Super Bowl favorite, or the Seattle Seahawks are in a lot more trouble than we thought they were and aren't going to be as good as we thought they were with that offensive line.
Well, they also play in the NFC West, so you're going to get 6 free. Well,
Probably
5 free because then they're going to lose to the Rams in a weird situation.
Yeah.
So,
and I think Seattle, maybe aside from the offensive line, I think Seattle
maybe one of the
might
best
be the
teams.
best team in the NFC if you take away the offensive line. I mean, because Green Bay's entire defense is very mediocre. I mean, who's there? Is it Montgomery's running back in Green Bay right now?
Starting,
They don't really have a running game. Seattle has more of a running back by committee, and it's worked pretty well for them. Doug Baldwin's one of the more underrated receivers in the NFL. Jimmy Graham's still a game changer. Russell Wilson's, kind of getting in those prime years of his career, but the offensive line can't block anybody, and that's not going to do any good if you can't block anybody, because I can't think of who their backup quarterback is off the top of my head. But I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, if they keep blocking the way they are, he's going to be in the game, and he's not going to be as effective as Russell Wilson. Mm-hmm. And I believe it's Trayvon Boykin. So maybe it's Austin Davis. Wow. Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah. So you gotta protect him. You have to.
I think their defense is going to keep them in almost every game because they went into Lambeau Field, and they held the Packers to 17 points. Aaron did not look great, still had 300 yards, 1 touchdown, but I mean, if that game's not there, then I think that the Seahawks might have won just because of how the Packers look way different when they're home and away.
And you got to remember, too, they had that interception callback for a kind of a block in the back, and then the Jeremy Lane punch, or that wasn't really a punch.
I've seen a lot of things that they're trying to stop guys from fighting, basically, which I can understand that mentality, but he didn't throw a punch. That he
just drug to the ground and ended up getting ejected for it.
So yeah, it's unfortunate, and I don't really know how they can help that, because if they're trying to not get guys to fight, and that's what maybe he just should have used instigating a fight instead of throwing a punch, then maybe people would have been like, okay, I guess, but it's still not a good call anyway around.
And you look at Seattle's offensive line, and you got two former first rounders in Jermaine Ifedi, who was a first round pick, I believe, 2 years ago, and Luke Jokel, who was a first round pick for Jacksonville that actually a lot of people wanted the Chiefs to take him over Eric Fisher. And then after that, Justin Britt, a guy that's been around a while. He's serviceable at the center position. And then 2 guys I'm not going to lie, I had never heard of before looking this up. And I'm pretty up to date on my NFL offensive linemen. Mark Giowinski and Reese Adahiyambo. So, I mean, those guys got exposed.
Yeah. Well, we'll go to our next game. One that may not have looked on paper that it should have been good, but it played out pretty well, and it is the Falcons and the Bears. And this game, I thought the Falcons could have looked bad, but I didn't expect it to be this close. The Falcons, they only threw to Julio Jones, I think, 5 times, which anytime he's under 10, I would say you need to put him more in to the offense, because the Falcons' leading receiver was Austin Hooper with 2 receptions for 128 yards. So he still had the yards.
And I had Austin Hooper on my fantasy team.
Was he on the bench?
Because I had Travis Kelce starting.
Well, yeah, because I mean,
I'm not going to start Austin Hooper over Travis Kelce.
Like, his one touchdown was a broken play that the Bears just messed up.
82 yards or something like that, 84 yards.
88.
Yeah, and it was big.
Yeah, but the Bears just didn't know what to do on defense, and it was a broken play. But the bigger thing I'm getting at is, do you think that this Falcons team is this what they're going to be, or is this just an opening season game and they just had to kind of get back into the game basically, and they're still going to be good, or will they have a Super Bowl letdown?
I think the loss of Kyle Shanahan at the offensive coordinator position was was their biggest issue Sunday. It was clear and evident that their offense was not going to be what it was last year. And after watching that game, I know I was way too high on the Falcons coming into the season.
Did you have them in the Super Bowl?
No, but I had them.
Did you have them in the NFC Championship game? I know I didn't even have them in the playoffs, and neither did Sean.
Yeah, I'm way too. I still think they're going to fight for a playoff spot, but their offense is not what it was last year, and they don't have a defense to stop enough, teams from scoring enough points where their offense can keep up, and they're just missing the mind of Kyle Shanahan, and that was the biggest point of that game to me.
Yeah, and the thing I noticed on that last drive, I mean, Mike Glennon's no world beater. He just took him right down the field. And, I mean, if Josh Bellamy doesn't drop a pass in the end zone and Jordan Howard doesn't get his clock clean trying to catch a pass, and then I believe Glennon had a bad throw in there, and then Atlanta's lucky on fourth down and gets pressure, and Bruce Reed gets the sack, Chicago wins that game. Yeah. I mean, catch the ball one time, and Chicago wins that game. They were really lucky to walk out of Soldier Field 1-0. And I think Atlanta has the capability of being an 8, 9, 10, maybe 11-win team. But I just don't know. I think the rest of the South got better this year. And what did Atlanta do to get better? Most of the time when you see a team come that close to winning a Super Bowl, they don't rebuild, they reload. And Atlanta didn't rebuild, but they didn't really reload either. I mean, what did they add that made that team better on the defensive side?
I can't think of anything, and then the offense just stayed the same minus the offensive coordinator going to San Francisco.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess they added Dontari Poe. I forgot about that for what it's worth. I mean, that's pretty much the extent of it.
Yeah, that's true. Now we're going to go to maybe the most surprising game of Sunday, which was Jacksonville pulling off the upset against the Texans, 29-7. The leading passer for the Jacksonville Jaguars was Blake Bortles with 125 yards. I have been saying since this game that if he doesn't have to quarterback, that they have chances to win, because if he's not going to take them out of the game and this isn't even like managing a game. This is several steps under that at this point, because he's just trying not to mess up, which is not quite managing a game, because at that point, he just, I don't know. But Jacksonville came out and they pretty much stomped the Texans, and the Texans don't quite know what they want to do with their quarterback. Could be Deshaun Watson. I don't think it'll be Tom Savage, though.
Do they even have a tight end on their roster now? They had 3 tight ends go through concussion protocol.
Well, yeah, because the one that I saw was
CJ
Fedorowicz went out, but I hadn't looked anything past that.
Yeah, so, Houston's a team that I have a lot of doubts about. I had them in the AFC just because outside of the top, New England, Pittsburgh, Kansas City, Oakland, the AFC is pretty weak this year. And I didn't know where else to go, and just the way things worked out at Houston in the wild card. But they got to get that quarterback situation figured out there. And I'm not sure Savage won't be the guy this week. But the problem with that is you've already shown your hand with Deshaun Watson. So, I mean, you can't keep teeter-tottering back and forth.
No, you have to pick one and then go with them.
Their O-line was not good on Sunday.
Jacksonville has a okay defense that can be good if they're not down by 3-4 touchdowns, in the second quarter. So,
And going back to what you said about Jacksonville, it looks like they could maybe try to play like what the Bears did when Rex Grossman was their quarterback. Just let the defense make plays. You have a bruising running back in Leonard Fournette who had 100 yards on 23 carries or something
26,
like that.
But still, the point is, he did his job, carried the ball, didn't turn it over, and they didn't let Blake mess up.
Yeah, I mean, let Blake Bortles make the easy passes, dummy the game down for him, which is fine when you're playing Houston. We'll see. I don't have their schedule right in front of me, but we'll see as the season goes along if they can get that formula rolling and if it's a winning formula. I have my doubts.
And something that can't be overlooked is Hurricane Harvey in Houston. Is Houston lost their last preseason game. They lost some practices. You got Tom Savage as your quarterback, and you're losing practices and losing games with your guys, and then you're going to come into a game, you're overly emotional for your city, and you're either going to come out and put together a great game, or you're going to come out and completely have a letdown game. they had the letdown game, but I just don't think you can overlook the impacts on Hurricane Harvey on the Texans in this game, which I think made the Jacksonville Jaguars look a lot better than they actually are.
And also the Jaguars did lose Allen Robinson for the season with the torn ACL. So
that'll be huge, but again, if they don't need him per se, then it might not.
There are 4 wide receivers on the roster. Aurelius Ben, I did not know that guy was still in the league. Keelan Cole, don't know who that is. Alan Hearns and Marquise Lee.
My goodness, that is not very good depth, so they might have to go sign just, maybe a veteran that, maybe like a Victor Cruz. I don't think he got signed. I don't know if he can play still, but
yeah.
I mean, why not just have a older guy there?
But you look at Jacksonville, and maybe with that formula of just not letting Blake Bortles mess stuff up, that division is a pretty winnable division, other than maybe Tennessee. I mean, we can go on in the Colts here in a minute because that's a totally different subject in its own, but we already saw how they were able to handle Houston.
That's true. Well, we're going to go to that team that you just talked about, where the Colts, they scored 9 points. Congratulations. The only problem was you were playing the Rams, who scored 46, which is not it's not very good when you're playing the game of football. Golf, yes, very good scores there. But no, we are playing football, and the Colts, I mean, I thought they were going to be bad, but I didn't think it would be quite this bad.
Yeah, the Colts might have, take away Andrew Luck, and the Colts might have the worst roster in professional football. It's probably worse than some college rosters.
I don't think it's quite worse than college rosters, but it's not good. So it's.
I mean, and you look at their O-line, and there's not a lot of experience there. And T.Y. Hilton is decent, but outside of that, Dante Moncrief, I know they were expecting big things from him this year. I didn't really see it on Sunday. Frank Gore is still got some tread, but I mean, I'm
very surprised that he's still playing on.
I mean, he's
honestly.
34 or something like that. He's got to be up there. Robert Turbin is their backup, who saw a lot of playing time. The Colts right now are just a dumpster fire. I mean, that's really all they are. They have done an awful job at getting pieces around Andrew Luck. They have a quarterback that has the potential to be a generational type quarterback that only comes every so often.
And they're completely wasting it.
And they have failed to put weapons around him and get him in a situation that wins. I think with Andrew Luck, this team is maybe a 5 or 6 win team.
I think they could win more, but I think they're going to win 4 to 3 games.
But I think without Andrew Luck, I think this team's lucky to win 3 games. I mean, they looked that bad.
I mean, it's also against the Rams. The Rams, I think, have gotten better as well, but I don't think they've gotten this good type of team. Like I think they could win
somewhere
8 games,
6
8
and
games
9
if,
games.
If things play out correctly. But I mean, the Colts, where do you go from here? Do you put in Jacoby Brissett?
I would. You almost have to. Scott Tolzien wasn't even that impressive of a college quarterback at Wisconsin. Remember, he was the one that filled in for Aaron Rodgers 3 or 4 years ago, and Rodgers broke his collarbone, wasn't he? And couldn't win a game for him in Green Bay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would say you go to Jacoby Brissett sooner rather than later.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, at one point if they go, let's say Andrew Luck is out for 6 weeks and you go 0-6, I mean, you're not playing great teams. So if you can't pick up wins against the bad teams, then how are you going to do when you have to face good teams? It's not going to be pretty.
Chuck Pagano is going to get fired. It's coming.
Probably should have got fired a few years ago, but
it's coming.
We're going to talk about one more game in our NFL season, and that is the New York Giants and the Dallas Cowboys. So this game wasn't really much of a game. Without Odell Beckham playing, the Giants don't look like they can do anything on offense, but the Cowboys, they looked better on defense. How much can you actually tell if you're not going against the 100% Giants? But I mean, hey, the Cowboys played and they got the win. So that's all they can ask for at this point.
Yeah, the Giants O-line is about in the same boat as Seattle's O-line. They couldn't get anything going offensively. Did they have how many first downs throughout the whole game? Not very many.
Well, I can quickly look it up.
And you have $1 million defense, but that's not going to do you any good if your defense is on the field twice as much as your offense. I mean, they could barely even get past the 50-yard line. So they shot themselves in the foot offensively, and you could tell they were missing Odell Beckham. Their running game is. I don't know why. I don't know why they didn't go out and try to draft a running back or at least in free agency. I mean, you're telling me Adrian Peterson wouldn't be better than Paul Perkins, even at.
He would, but it's a different style of running, so he would have been better where he is now than with the Giants.
You mean sitting on the bench, not getting the ball?
Hey, he got 9 carries. I'm just saying.
The Cowboys looked good.
I mean, they were the Cowboys, so.
Yeah, and I think Dallas is a 10 or 11 win team this year. I really do.
Yeah.
I think teams will kind of figure out Dak. I mean, I don't know how you figure out Ezekiel Elliott, assuming he plays all year, which it kind of sounds like he very well might, and that suspension might drag in. It'll be kind of like the whole Tom Brady saga all over again and drag into 2018. But the Cowboys look good. Giants, and not so much.
That's true. And to your question earlier, the Giants had 13 first downs. The Cowboys had 22. So they still got some of them, but they didn't have the big plays. They only had 35 yards on the ground. You can't win games like that now. You don't have to have that side of the game.
How many times they run the ball? Like 12 times or 14? It wasn't very many.
They rushed it 12 times.
Yeah. You got to run the ball somewhere between 20 to 30 times easily.
And that's just to keep the defense off balance. Pretty much easy as that. Do you want to add anything else before we switch over to another topic?
Trevor brought up that the Giants' defense is pretty good, but I think early in that game, the Giants' defense was on pace to have to defend over 100 plays. It only ended up being 71, but early in that game, the Giants' defense got tired.
Yeah,
and
you could see it too.
And I mean, when a tired defense can only give up 19 points to an okay offense, you got Zeke and big play possibilities over there in Dallas, only give up 19 points, you should be able to win that football game. But then you only score 3 points, and not having OBJ, they looked like he is possibly one of the most valuable players in the NFL.
And he might be. I mean, and you look, even to give up 19 points, and not even if you lose the game, you got to at least be a factor in it. If it's 19-17, then we're just talking, okay, well, if the Giants had Odell, I mean, that's probably a 6-point swing. They win that game. They look totally incompetent. I mean, everyone made a big deal about, Brandon Marshall's going to add him another dimension out wide. He didn't catch a pass till like 40 seconds to go in the game when it didn't matter.
Yeah, and at one point, I think everyone was questioning why not have Beckham out there as a decoy. I mean, it was that bad for the Giants offense that put him out there, make them maybe even just think that he's got the capability of doing something to maybe open up your other receivers that weren't able to seemingly do anything.
Yeah. I mean, for that, the Giants, I think once he comes back, they'll be a different team. But if he's out for a while, like if he's out for 4 to 5 weeks,
they could struggle.
Then that could change the entire outlook for their season.
Well, and you look at this week, they play Detroit, and that's a team that's not afraid to spread the field. And Matthew Stafford will throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns or something like that again this week, I'm sure. You got to be able to go up and down the field with them. I mean, you can't allow Detroit to make big plays and then your offense, stall, and then you're turning around and having your defense right back out there. That's not a good recipe.
That's true. So next we will talk about college football, what happened last week, and what's coming up next. And we're back here on the X106 podcast. I'm Sean Nino, joined by Trevor Mader and Jacob Blair. Right now we're going to talk about last week's college football games, and right now we're going to start with the cream of the crop, not Iowa State. Though, Trevor, we will get to that just because I know how much you're a diehard fan. We will start with Oklahoma, Ohio State. I didn't see this game coming. I thought Ohio State was going to win, but then J.T. Barrett didn't look like a quarterback. He just didn't look like he could play, and Baker Mayfield came to life in the second half, and right now he's probably the Heisman favorite. I mean, through only 2 weeks, how much can you actually tell? But right now, he is the front runner, and Oklahoma won 31-16.
Yeah, if Baker Mayfield plays like this all year, hello Heisman. I mean, he played a good game. What do you guys think of him planting the flag after the game? I love it because as a Big Ten guy, anytime you can spurn Ohio State or Michigan, I love it.
Well, not just that. I mean, Ohio State did the same thing last year.
Yeah, and that too.
And then he had to come out Monday to be like, "Oh, I'm sorry." No, you're not.
That was forced.
That was
forced.
Don't apologize. Don't apologize for beating them.
No, I mean
You beat them. It's not your fault. They couldn't get it done on their home turf. I didn't get the chance to watch the game. Some of us have to work on Saturday night, Sean. But
I couldn't watch it either, but I tuned in on the good old radio.
I was when I did finally get the chance to check the score, I was surprised to see that not only had Oklahoma won, they won by 2 touchdowns at Ohio State. But I mean, they played the game they had to, and it worked out for them, and they're able to get the win. So now they're up to number 2 in the rankings. So I guess when you beat the number 2 team and you're ranked 5th, that's pretty justifiable, I guess.
Well, yeah, and I mean, teams don't normally play other teams in the top 5 many times throughout the year, so you see a lot of things change from week to week when this type of stuff happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this game kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, I didn't, again, expect Ohio State to play this bad, but they did. And so do you think this ruins the Ohio State season? Or, like, if they run the table, is it just like, yeah, they're still going to get in?
If a Big Ten team wins the conference championship with 1 loss, they will get in. Unless that loss is to, like, Southeastern Maine Community College or something
Rutgers,
like that.
though, like if you play like Rutgers, Minnesota, like those not.
But see, I don't know that it matters. I really, I'm a firm believer in, even you go back a couple years ago with Iowa. If Iowa loses a game in the regular season,
they're done.
But still wins the Big Ten championship with 1 loss. That's a pretty tough argument to make when you look at what the Big Ten has. If Ohio State runs the table, which means they have to beat Iowa at Iowa, they have to beat Michigan, they have to beat Penn State, those are, I'm going to guess at least 2 of those 3, maybe all 3 of them are going to be really good wins. Yeah. So if you go 11-1 in the Big Ten, you're in. It's not like it's the Big 12.
Well, no, but I mean, if Oklahoma State goes undefeated and at this point beats Oklahoma State twice.
The only thing where I think you could see maybe some problems with that is, say, Alabama and USC both run the table.
Mm-hmm.
And Oklahoma and Oklahoma State come into that last week both unbeaten. And Oklahoma wins the first game. Well, the way the Big 12 Conference Championship game works now is it's just the top 2, which means you could very well see a rematch of Oklahoma State the next week. And Oklahoma State beats Oklahoma, then you kind of get there, okay, well, Oklahoma State's the Big 12 champion, so that means they get in. And then you start looking at the eye test, and you go, okay, well, Oklahoma beat Ohio State by 15 in Columbus. Then maybe make the argument the Big 12 gets 2 teams in.
Nah, because I think you're going to get at least one from the Pac-12. You're going to get Alabama in. And depending on who wins the Big 10. Because if it's a one-loss team, then they could put the undefeated Big 12 champion in. And I think if they're both 1 loss, then they would put the Big 10 champion in, just because of the way it works. Unless it's
but if it's Oklahoma if you're Oklahoma, even if you lose the Big 12 championship, wouldn't you be saying, hey, we beat Ohio State at 15 on their home turf? The same argument that Ohio State had last year when they didn't win the championship, but they only had 1 loss, as opposed to Michigan's 2, as opposed to Penn State's 2. I mean, but so if they win out, they'll get in. Let's quit being silly. They'll get in.
Well, yeah, if you win, like, unless 5 teams from the Power 5 conferences go undefeated, like, that would be the only reason that we have a lot of
The only logical
conference.
way would be is if Alabama, Oklahoma, and Clemson all go, and USC all go undefeated, which I mean, that hasn't happened.
No, but if it did, then those, I don't care if you're a 1-loss team at all. You're not getting in at that
then
point.
It makes it really, really difficult to make a valid argument for them to get in.
I think all this talk isn't really necessary because I don't think Ohio State's going to win
No,
out.
I don't either.
No, but
I don't think they're going to get it. But if they win out, they're in.
Yeah.
But they're going to have to win out. Then they're going to have to win the Big Ten championship game. And if they don't win out, or they lose a game and then go win the Big Ten championship,
and
they're still not going to get in with those 2 losses.
And what I think very well could happen is kind of similar to last year in the Big Ten, where I could see Ohio State beating Penn State in Columbus, Penn State beating Michigan, and then Michigan turned around and beating Ohio State. Well, then you got 3 teams with 1 loss. Don't know how the tiebreakers work there, but you could see just like last year where a 2-loss Ohio State team gets into the Big Ten championship game, and you got Michigan and Penn State going, wait a minute, we had 1 loss. I know we didn't win the conference championship, but Ohio State didn't win the conference championship last year, and they got them with 1 loss. So, but to me, I don't think Ohio State's going to go undefeated the rest of the season. Their schedule is just a little too rigorous. When you have Michigan and Penn State still left on the schedule, and playing at Iowa on the road, down the road, could be a tough game too, seeing where that team is.
And I think that situation that you just described where Ohio State's 2 losses, but they only have 1 in conference, puts them in the Big Ten championship game.
And we saw last year, it didn't get Penn State in the playoffs.
That's the scenario where both Oklahoma and Oklahoma State could end up, getting 2 Big 12 teams into the playoffs.
Because if they both have 1 loss, and Oklahoma, and let's, like I said, if Ohio State runs the table, which they won't, but if they do, and Oklahoma State both have 1 loss, but Oklahoma State's the Big 12 champion, if you're Oklahoma, aren't you going to say, we beat Ohio State, we should be in?
Mm-hmm.
You've set the precedent. That was a problem with them letting Ohio State in last year after not winning the conference championship, is you set the precedent of conference championships really don't mean anything. And, I think last year it was pretty obvious that Penn State looked like the better Big Ten team at the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
I know they got thumped by Michigan earlier in the year, but to me the important thing about the playoff is you want the 4 best teams come playoff time.
Yeah.
It just is what it is. It's a long ways from September to January. It's a long ways.
Yeah, so next we are going to go to Auburn-Clemson, which, it's not as high profile of a matchup as you would think. Like when you hear those names in the past few years, like, oh, those 2 teams are good. But to me, this matchup, it didn't quite live up to what it could have been. But Clemson still came out with the victory, 14-6, very low-scoring game for college football. That's pretty much all from my end. Trevor, do you have anything to add to this?
I thought there'd be a lot more points in that one. Clemson likes to spread it and score, and Jarrett Stidham's a guy that had a lot of love from, coming into the preseason, and he was 13 of 24 for 79 yards.
Clemson's defense may be the best in
absolutely.
the entire nation. So that's one thing to look at, but, again, I was not expecting a 14-6 score.
And he must have been
teams.
Sacked a lot, too, because I'm seeing 18 rushes for minus 42 yards.
Yeah, that's not good.
So, as I pull it up, he was sacked 11 times. Yeah.
I was going to say, even their...
you're not going to win many games. When
the Auburn running back Cameron Petaway had 22 carries for 74 yards, so clearly he was sacked a lot there. And,
Well, and Austin Bryant, the defensive end for Clemson, had 4 sacks alone. So, Clemson's defense is, for my money, maybe one of the best in college football, if not the best. Interesting to see what they can do this week against Louisville with Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, that'll be one thing to watch this week. And Clemson, I don't think they're going to score a lot of points, but good luck scoring on them. So they're going to be pretty much in every single game.
Yeah.
Does Clemson, they don't look real impressive on the offensive end.
No.
And they're probably not going to win out.
I don't know.
I think they'll lose. If you can't score points, you're probably going to lose the game.
I agree with Jacob. You look at the ACC, and the ACC is maybe, for my money, all around, the deepest conference in college football. You got to go at Virginia Tech. The rest of their schedule is a little favorable. You got at Louisville this week, then at home against Boston College, at Virginia Tech. So you got two tough road games. Home against Wake Forest, at Syracuse, home against Georgia Tech. Do not sleep on Georgia Tech. At North Carolina State, home against Florida State. Okay, the Citadel, we'll give them that one. And then at South Carolina, who actually has looked competent.
And they beat Missouri.
And North Carolina State.
Okay.
They look competent. Nothing special, but competent.
Yeah, but I expect Clemson to beat any team that's not Louisville, Florida State before the quarterback went out, and that's pretty much it. And then, I think that they could go undefeated at this point because no one's really going to be able to challenge them.
My issue with Clemson is if you can't score points, that makes you more susceptible to an upset.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I don't see them, unless they find a way to put more points on the board, to be able to stay behind their defense all year long without someone having a lucky game,
well,
figuring it out and scoring more
and
points.
Auburn's defense is no slouch either. I mean,
that's true.
I mean, it is an SEC defense. So, to me, this week against Louisville, I'm hoping for a shootout. Lamar Jackson is for real.
He's for real for college. I'm not 100% sold on what he can do after this year when he goes pro, but it is really nice to see because he's putting up crazy numbers.
Yeah.
And if it is a shootout, then all of your kind of worries about Clemson's offense can kind of go away.
Yep.
And then you can really start talking about Clemson running the table and being.
I could see it, but then when I see at Virginia Tech, that's a tough place to play. Louisville this week. Florida State later in the season. I mean, that could be a game that Florida State's, got another loss or two chalked up, and they're not thinking playoff picture.
And they're just
that's
there
something
to ruin
their
day.
That's one that they'll put on their calendar that well, if we're not getting in, they're not getting in.
That's true. Next, we're going to talk about the only non-ranked game that we're going to talk about this week, due to Trevor's request. The Iowa State game. This is actually one of the only games that I actually sat down and actually watched the entire game because I have other people who enjoy the game. So I, need to be able to heckle one side or the other. So Trevor, from your vantage point, how did this Iowa State match go from your eyes?
Wild. People that aren't fans of either side of the rivalry, I don't think fully fathom what, weird things always seem to happen in the Iowa State game.
Yeah, I know a few years ago it was just a
2011 Iowa State won 44-41. So this was payback. But weird things always seem to happen. Like Iowa State will have a guy that'll throw for 350 yards in his second career game, and they'll win the game, and you'll be like, okay, this guy is legit, and then you'll never hear from the guy again. Or Iowa will just blow him out. It's a weird rivalry game, and that's what it is a rivalry game. It was one of those losses or games that if Iowa would have lost, I would have been upset because I would have had to hear from my friends that are Iowa State fans about it for the next year. But it would have been. I don't think it would have been a bad loss. Iowa State's gonna be.
Well,
decent.
It depends what you define as a bad loss, because if it's a 5-7 team. 6-6, then I would say it's a bad loss.
But when you're on the road in a rivalry game, your starter linebacker goes out. You have a young secondary. It's not a good loss, but it's not a terrible loss.
Well, no, it's not like the worst you could get, but it's still not great to lose to Iowa State.
And I'm by no means gonna say Iowa's a team that's capable of making the playoff, because that'd be silly talk. Do I think this team could win the Big Ten West? Maybe. You got to beat Wisconsin, and you can't mess up along the way. But this team could win 9, maybe 10 games. I could see it. They luck out. They get Penn State and Ohio State at home, which could be really good. It's they just announced yesterday that the Penn State game is going to be a nighttime game. Nighttime games at Kinnick Stadium are a ton of fun because fans enjoy them all day long. So I saw a lot of good things from Iowa this past week. Nathan Stanley, their sophomore quarterback, second start, his first ever start on the road in a rivalry game against your most hated rival. He made a couple of throws that I know we were talking back and forth about that kind of drove me wild, but then he stepped up and made some big boy throws when it mattered.
Gotta love those big boy throws, let me tell you.
And I don't know that there's a better 1-2 running back combination in the country than what there is with Akram Wadley and James Butler. I mean, I guess you being an outsider and not having a dog in the fight, what was your takeaway from the game? You can't tell me it wasn't at least a fun game to watch.
It was when I could fully watch it. I had a little bit of connection issues with ESPN, so I'd get to watch a play, then it drops off. I'm like, oh, this is not as fun to watch. Nathan Stanley didn't look good for a bit, and then he actually finished the game very well, but for a while, Akram Wadley, right?
Akram Wadley.
Yeah, he was the only way that they were in that game
absolutely
for a bit.
James Butler had some good runs, and I like what they're doing with Noah Fant, sophomore tight end out of Omaha. That kid's got first-round NFL talent written all over him. I mean, and Iowa's great at churning out tight ends, and he's just another one of them. And their secondary did look weak at times, but you look at Iowa State might have the best wide receiving core in the Big 12. You got Alan Lazard, who's going to be probably a top 2 or 3 round pick. Hakeem Butler, who has NFL caliber play, and then the little guy out of the backfield that I'd never even heard of before Saturday, David Montgomery, who was about to give me nightmares. But, I mean, Iowa State they couldn't quite get it done. And Iowa State, I think, is going to surprise some people this year. I wasn't as sold on before this game. Iowa State could win 7 or 8 games. I mean, they're going to lose to Oklahoma. They're going to lose to Oklahoma State. But outside of that, I don't know. There's not a game in the Big 12 they can't win.
And just to go back to the actual game itself real quick, that was probably the most exciting game of college football the week. There were multiple times where, you thought Iowa was going to run away with it. It was over.
There were about 3 times that I thought Iowa was going to win by 3 touchdowns. And then there were about 3 times that I thought Iowa was going to lose by 3 touchdowns.
I'm looking at stuff, and I think 31 points total were scored in the last 12 minutes of the fourth quarter. That
sounds pretty right.
Something like looks like about 50 points were scored in the second half and overtime, and just it was an exciting
17,
game.
17-14 at the half, I want to say. So, yeah, it was, man, I mean, my living room is so small that I can only pace around it so much.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a crazy game.
And I was in and out on this game, wasn't able to watch the whole, and every time I'd get back to it, a different team was winning by 10 points, and constant momentum shifts, and it was just a very exciting game to watch.
It was. Yeah, I can say this now, given the result that it was exciting. Hopefully North Texas isn't that exciting this week.
If it is, then I may actually have to, harass you for the entire week, because that should not be a close game.
I will harass myself, too, and when Kansas loses to Ohio by 4 touchdowns, I will make sure to.
That's fine. I mean, I've been down for 6 years, so it's fine. It's okay, Trevor. Now we'll talk about the final game that was between ranked teams this weekend and our last topic for the podcast, and it is USC versus Stanford, the battle out west. Trevor, I know you thought that Stanford could come into this game. I was not fully on the hype train for the Trojans, but the USC came through 42-24. I was not expecting this. Sam Darnold, 21 for 26 for 316 yards, 4 touchdowns, which is what he did not do in the first game of the year. So, I mean, I think USC, they don't really have to do anything the rest of the year, and they can just kind of ride it out.
Yeah. Well, they do have Texas this week.
Oh, God. Oh, no, I can't wait for that 70-0 game between USC and Texas.
I tried to be clever, and normally when USC plays Stanford, USC finds ways to lose when they're the higher-ranked team. So I saw what Stanford had done against Rice. Granted, it was Rice. They also had a week off, so they had an extra week to prepare, and I said, oh, why not? I'll go Stanford. Didn't quite go that way.
Nope.
So, yeah, I mean, I think Texas will give USC more of a game than I think you're giving them credit for. Oh, yeah,
definitely, but I'm just, very down on Texas right now. But, I mean, I think it'll be bigger than what it was this week. I think USC will be able to score more on Texas, and, I mean, it could still be 50-20 at that point, so.
That's fine. When Texas loses, America wins.
So it's like when Notre Dame loses, the Patriots lose, Alabama loses. Just America wins at that point. You can have a happy night's sleep. You don't have to worry about any fans. Twitter becomes a great place because there are memes everywhere.
See, and being a Big Ten guy, it's the same way when Michigan loses.
Michigan, Ohio State,
and don't get me wrong, all the stuff that's happened there in the last 5 years makes it really tough. But when I look at the 3 top teams in the Big Ten, I'm pulling for Penn State because, having seen Ohio State and Michigan year in and year out own the Big Ten, it makes you want them to lose. Same with Texas for a long time in the Big 12.
Yeah, I'm not quite that way with Oklahoma State. I'm not quite there because they're, okay, they can win because my team doesn't have a shot at all, so why do I even care? But back to USC Stanford for a little bit, USC, are they going to be this good and be able to go into the playoff, or
they're going to run into Washington most likely? That'll
be a good game. Let me think.
Washington might have a fake ID as well.
Well, Washington, I think they'll be able to score. But
I think so
we'll
too.
see.
That'll be a really good game. I've gone back and forth on that one if it comes down to it, which way to go. I wasn't big on Washington at all last year. I picked against them just about every week on Weekend Sports Kickoff, and I don't know. I think USC runs the table. I think USC and Bama run the table. I think Oklahoma finds a way to lose a game. Oklahoma State will lose one they shouldn't. Clemson will lose one. I mean, you could have 6 or 7 teams with one loss.
Yeah, and that'll get really, really cluttered for the playoff, and teams are going to get angry, and they're going to be like, well, why weren't we in? If you just don't lose that game to Kansas, you wouldn't have been in this situation. Or if you don't lose that game to Iowa, you don't have to worry about it.
Well, and I had that argument with Michigan fans last year, and they lost to Iowa, then they turn and lose to Ohio State, and they're saying, well, we should get in over Ohio State. Okay, well, you lost to Ohio State. You had 2 losses, and Ohio State had 1 loss. Plus, Penn State won the Big Ten championship. Shouldn't they get in over you by winning the championship? Well, we beat Penn State by 40 at home. Okay, that was like the first week of September. It was a totally different Penn State team.
Well, still, I mean, if you beat a team by 40, that's still something.
But going back to what I said earlier, when you look at the playoff, you want the 4 best teams in December. They might be 11-1. They might even be 10-2. I'm not saying you should go a 10-2 team over a 12-0 team, but you want the 4 best teams. At that time last year, Penn State was the best team.
Mm-hmm.
USC and Alabama should be 2 of the 4 best teams come December. And then after that, you could draw out of a hat. It could be Penn State, it could be Michigan, it could be Ohio State, it could be Oklahoma, it could be Oklahoma State, it could be Washington, it could be Clemson, it could still be Florida State. What if South Florida runs the table? I mean,
well, I'm sure Charlie Strong will have that team playing really well even after the hurricane is fully gone through.
Yeah, so I mean, it's going to be interesting. This is the greatest time of the year.
Close. My birthday's in June, so I'm a little bit biased, but for sports reasons, this is pretty much the best you can get. Baseball's wrapping up, college football starting, NFL started this past week. So, anything else you guys want to add before we end this?
I'm excited to watch some more football this week. USC, Texas, Louisville, Clemson. It's just kind of I guess there isn't a ton of Florida, Tennessee. I'm excited for a 10-9 game.
Yeah, that's true.
And then the NFL Sundays do nothing productive except watch football, and that's pretty much the extent of it.
And watch more football.
Yeah, NASCAR race in Chicago.
Oh boy, I'm so excited for that.
Who's your pick to win that?
Kyle Larson.
Good. I'm going Martin Truex. What about you, Sean?
I'm going to go with the crowd. That is my pick to win. There's going to be a massive wreck. I don't know how big the track is. We'll go in the 107th lap. That's my guess. But, Jacob, anything else to add?
No, just going to be another good week. You got some good matchups college-wise. You got some good matchups NFL-wise. Big thing for me is NFL side, just how are the Chiefs really going to do without Eric Berry? I think that's the biggest question for me, into this weekend of sports on the pro side. So just, hoping for another Chiefs victory.
Well, for Jacob Blair, Trevor Mader, I've been Sean Nino, and you've been tuned in to the X106 podcast.